Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Course Building Secrets podcast. So happy that you're here today and welcome to another week. Welcome to September. If you are listening live, then welcome to September. It's a fun day. Most of the kids are going back to school. So those of us who have children are getting our lives back and having a little bit of quiet time and ability to reflect and get a little bit more planning maybe in our day than we had prior to this moment. Okay, today I want to talk about offboarding. So we talk a lot about onboarding when we talk about the customer experience, right? So what happens from the time that they purchase to the time that you start working with them is that you want to be really intentional about helping them decide, like, I made the right choice. I am in the right place. This is where I belong. And you get them oriented, you get them organized, you help them understand like where all the things are, right? If you're doing a course in person or you're working with somebody live, you're going to help them like, here are the logistics. Here's how to find the bathroom. Here's how the day is going to go. All of those things are normal things that we do when people come to us either in a training environment or in a client environment, is that we kind of give them a lay of the land. I think that most of the time that's intuitive to people. Although I will say that when you move online, a lot of times people forget that, right? They forget, oh, well, normally I would walk them through how it's going to work and what the expectations were and where to find the exits and all the things that they need to know about before something starts. When people move their programs online, for some reason they sort of forget that, right? And so it's an essential component to starting the relationship. All right, so we've talked about that in the past. What we haven't talked about is offboarding. So let me just explain what that is, because it's also just as important. So your goal in acquiring a customer is to be able to help them fulfill on whatever the problem or result is that they're looking for, right? That's why they're hiring you, is that they trust that you are the one who can take them from where they are to where they want to go. But there are times when people need to go a different direction, or something has come up in their life and they need to pivot and do something different. So they may need to exit the relationship. They may need to exit your program in one way, shape, or form. And especially if you're doing a continuity program, this is common, right? There's other things that come up. People feel that they are either getting their needs met or need to get their needs met differently. So you have to have a process for offboarding your clients. Either clients who are leaving sort of in the middle or, at a time that you wouldn't necessarily, naturally end the relationship, or once the relationship is over, right? Once your program is over, once they've achieved their results, how are you helping them, determine and know what the next steps are? Right? So offboarding is super important. So let me just tackle both of those because they're a little bit different. So the first one is when somebody leaves when you're not expecting it. How do you maintain a professional sort of exit strategy and keep the door open for the future? Because here's the reality is most of the time people aren't leaving because they don't like you or they don't like the program or it's not meeting some sort of need that they have, right? Most of the time there's a different decision that's driving that. Not all the time, but most of the time. And so if you just cut off the relationship, you disconnect their access, you tell them, thanks so much, bye-bye, you're severing that relationship. You're not keeping the door open for working with them in the future, right? And so they're ending the relationship, but like there's no reason that you also have to cut off and end the relationship. So how do you offboard? So there are a couple different ways to do that, right? One is to, send a message in whatever way you like to, video or email or some other way where it just says, hey, sounds like, you need to go a different direction. No problem. Here is kind of your next steps, right? We're going to, cut off your access. We're going to stop the billing. We're going to do all the things. And, we'd love to be able to check in after a certain period of time to see how you're doing. Does that work for you? Blah, 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 right? So you want to plant the seeds and just say a soft thank you and goodbye while maintaining a professional attitude and, really being able to keep the door open for the future. Happy to welcome you back whenever you're ready. Doors are always open, those kind of messages. It's a soft landing for somebody so they feel comfortable. They maybe have some feelings about, ending or, the relationship or what's going to happen in the future. And it gives them a soft landing so they can continue forward. They know that the door is open, that they can come back or be involved with things that you're doing without feeling like they're severing the relationship. Okay, so that's offboarding when you're not expecting it. And you can automate that, right? It doesn't have to be something that you have to reach out and be like, oh my gosh, like you're quitting. I feel terrible. I need you to stay on. I'm losing money. Like whatever, right? Like it doesn't have to be an emotional, message, right? It's just literally a thanks so much. It's, would love to have you stay, but certainly understand life circumstances come up. Here's some, here's sort of the next steps. Here's what's going to happen over the next, 30 days, right? You have access until this point and then it will cut off and blah, 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 all those things. And, like I would literally be intentional about what does that look like. And then, here we're going to follow up over time, which is also automated. And then, would love to keep the door open, have you come back when it suits you, when it's something that you're ready for at that time. Super soft landing, nice place to not only have them leave feeling confident and comfortable that they can come back, but if somebody else is asking about the program, it may not be a right fit for them right now, but they would then keep referring that business back to you because they had such a great experience and they were able to do what they needed to do to move on without kind of that sort of strange, breakup, if you will. Okay, so that's an unexpected. Then the second part of this is how do you offboard clients when they're finished with your relationship that you have, right? Say you have a 90-day implementation program. It ends at that 90 days. They're not paying you anymore. Does that mean that you're severing the cord and you're done and you never talk to them again? No, right? You want to continue that relationship. What does that look like? It really depends on your business model, right? You may determine that you want to work with them for 90 days and then over time they come back for another 90-day sprint. Or, there's sort of a plan for when they're going to need you again as time goes on. What you want to do is map that out and plan for it ahead of time. So you're planting seeds throughout that first iteration or first relationship that you have for them to say, and here's what happens after. Here's, when we're doing this after the 90 days, as this continues past the 90 days, or you're going to need another session every quarter or every, twice a year or once a year or whatever. You're teeing up that relationship and continuing that relationship within the first sprint that you're doing or program that you're doing or whatever it is that you're doing, right? And so they know what to expect on the last day. That's the very first thing, is make sure that you've kind of mapped that out ahead of time. And if you haven't, do it throughout the process so you understand, like, what do they need after? What's the next step for them? Because they're on a journey. Most of the time when people are learning something, or they're taking a course, or they're taking a program and they want to get to a result, what that does is they get the result, and then it opens up the next challenge, the next question that they're going to have. And so your job is to be able to be there for them at that time so you can help them through the next challenge, and then as they're growing and continuing forward. That's how you create a sustainable business, is you have the various steps along the journey, and you're able to help them through that. Now, I do know some people who just want to do the one transaction and then they're done, and that's what they do. They just keep selling that one transaction to more and more people, and that's totally fine. But just know that, what are you going to do on the back end of that when they're finished? What does that look like? Is it a graduation? Is it a handoff to someone else? Is it that they have all the tools that they need to move forward. What is that end game, and how do you want to end that relationship? Because let's be honest, it's a relationship, right? It's an opportunity for you to have a customer for life, to have a customer that comes back to you over and over again. Or if you don't want that, it's an opportunity for you to be able to hand them off to someone else, maybe, who gives you a kickback to that or whatever else. So think through that long-term strategy. But offboarding in that case means you're helping them determine what the next step is, or you're helping them celebrate the success that they had in that part of the program, and then teeing up when they need you. Maybe they only need you once a year. Maybe they only need you when they're doing a new launch or a new part of the process, and then you invite them to come back. Maybe you just want to celebrate their success along the path, where you're working with them for 90 days, and then 6 months later you follow up with them just to see how things are going and where they are in their progress. Maybe you want to do a continuity program on the back end where you pop them into something that's a longer term build and relationship. There are a lot of different ways to do that. Have it fit within your business model, but know that nobody wants an abrupt stop, regardless if they're stopping in the middle or they're stopping at the end, right? What's the thing that you're going to do to either end the relationship with a soft landing, or help them continue along the path so they continue to purchase from you, which is really where you get the most of your long-term revenue, right? Is in repeat business and in referrals, and really looking at that lifetime value of a customer. That's really where you start building a sustainable business. But either way, if it's something that you want to work with them 4 times a year, if you want to work with them once a year, then how are you putting things into place that helps to continue and build that relationship? And so that is my secret and tip for you today, is really think about that offboarding process as much as you think about onboarding, right? As much as you think about getting the customer, what are you doing at the end of the transactional element, or the end of the first sort of relationship point with a customer? Because it does matter. It does shape how they're going to refer other people to you. It does shape what decisions they're going to make in the future. Because if you're the right person for them to come back to 6 months later, and you haven't provided an open door, soft landing for them in terms of exiting, then they're not going to come back. They're going to go find somebody else, right? So how do you continue to build that relationship? And I'm going to tell you, doing an exit and then continuing to send nurture emails without that soft landing is not going to work for you, right? They're going to unsubscribe. They're not going to read your messages, and they're not going to keep going. It has to be some type of specific message to them on the back end that helps them feel supported through whatever decision they're making. If it's a decision to work with you or a decision to not work with you, makes a huge difference, right? Think about, just as a quick illustration before I jump off, is think about if you're returning something to a store, and they make a big stink about you returning something to the store. Maybe it doesn't fit. Maybe there's something wrong with it. Maybe you bought it for your kid and they don't want it anymore, right? If they make a huge stink around that, are you going to come back and buy something? No, because you're oh, that was a terrible process, right? Oh, that made me feel gross. I don't want to go back to that place because they made a big deal about, my returning this one thing. I was actually returning it. For me, I go to Target, right? I return something at Target. If they were to give me a big stink about returning something at Target, here's the other side of that, is I'm returning something and then I'm going right back into the store and probably spending 3 times more than that return I just did. But if they make a big stink at that return, I'm going to walk out of the store. I am not going to go into the store and buy all the things that I need. I'll go somewhere else. So think about that, because it's no different than that experience that you're creating for somebody. And especially if it's a higher ticket option, you really want to help them feel supported. You have no idea why they're making the decision that they're making. Don't make it personal. Have a way to offboard them. All right, there you go. That is my tip for you today.